We're going to jump into the data lineage training today. So for those of you who were in our previous webinar, the 10.1 review, we hinted at this, and today we'll be diving into the flagship feature of data lineage. So something we're really excited about launching, and then we launched back in December. Hopefully some of you had the opportunity to check that out. But we're going to go through a bit of training today led by Piotr Kononov, our founder and CEO. So allow him to say hello.
Hi, everyone.
And I'll be here just as the host today, Chase Summers, head of sales here at Dataedo. I've had the pleasure of meeting majority of you as I'm looking here, but excited to meet the remaining as we run through here. So I'll pass this off to Piotr here in a moment, but we'll jump through the agenda here first. So we will be covering the introduction to data lineage. So we'll be covering, what is data lineage to begin with, and some baseline examples of that, and then benefits. So what is it used for? How is it going to benefit you? And how we've seen our customers start to benefit very quickly. Next, we'll go into data lineage at Dataedo. So our approach, so how we approach the goal here of data lineage and how you can take advantage of that. And then we'll go into the how-to. So both how to do it within Dataedo and also what you need to get started here. Now we will end with a Q&A. So as we run through here, feel free to ask those questions in the questions tab, and we'll address those at the end, but don't feel like you have to wait till the end. Go ahead and throw them out as they come into your mind. And without further ado, I guess that's it. We'll hand it over to Piotr and get started.
Thanks, Chase. So let's start with a little theory about the data lineage. I think it's good to have an overview of what we are going to talk about. It's not an obvious topic for everyone. So let's start with the definition. The data lineage is the process of understanding, documenting, and visualizing how data flows through the ecosystem. It's usually visualized with a diagram similar to the one you see below. That's the diagram, interactive diagram from Dataedo Web Catalog. So basically, it includes different objects storing data and other objects processing this data, moving data, and the data flows, which are visualized with arrows. Yeah, pretty obvious when you look at the diagram. There are two aspects of data lineage, which are, the reasons why this is being used. This is an important functionality. So the first one is called data lineage, and it's a search for the origin of the data, the source of the data. So when you look at a specific table or any object data container, you look down the stream. You look for, or up the stream actually. You look where did that data come from. So in this case, we have a data warehouse table, and we can see that it was moved with the ETL package called DWH meetings, and it takes data from a bunch of other tables. So that's the data lineage. So where does the data come from? A simple question and a simple answer. Then the other side of the story is the downstream, is impact analysis. So basically, you're asking question, okay, where is it used? Where does the data go further from that spot? It's important when you'd like to change something. It's important when something went wrong. You would like to see what's the impact of that. So let's say you'd like to, add a column or rename it or change its purpose. You would really like to know what other reports are going to be affected by that, what other applications, who is going to be impacted by that, who can call you upset if something goes wrong, and also what you can check later on if it still works, if it still does its purpose. So yeah, two sides of the story, delivered with the same functionality basically. Let's have a look at a few examples of data flows or data lineage. I just want to show you that it's not, it's very broad topic. There are many different applications of that. So first use case is stored procedures in the database, any database, any SQL database. So in this case, we have a script that basically reads data with a simple select statement and inserts it to the another table, a very common use case. So yeah, that's a flow from one table or more tables with the use of some code and then being saved into another table or tables. It could also be done with the functions or triggers. Another use case, another aspect is are views. Views are very useful way of processing data in the database. So it's like a query with the name. It's very easy to do a view, create a view. You basically write a query and just give it a name, which is very beneficial. However, you end up with so many views, and sometimes people create view for each application and every query they are building. You end up with something overwhelming. So Data Lineage can show you the relationships between the flow of them, the hierarchies, different levels of complexity. Very useful to see this, very useful to understand. If you're going to change this view, what's that going to affect, and where does the data come from in this particular view? Then ETL and data warehouse. This is probably the most common use case, or at least originally the main request from data engineers and BI analysts, data architects was to understand how the data warehouse is being loaded with the data. So it's usually done with ETL packages or ETL code, whatever that is, regardless of technology. It's being moved from one source database, one set of tables, and moved into the data warehouse. And it can be very complex, and you as an analyst, data architect, data engineer, you really like to know what's the source of the data. You also want to know what objects are impacted by particular package, and so on. So this is a very common use case. Another one is BI tools. Many BI tools, this is a screenshot from Power BI. Many BI tools have built-in data lineage, the data lineage functionalities, the data lineage modules or reports. You have to remember it's very limited. Data lineage can be applied to specific, environment or solution. So in this case, it only shows you the flow from the source to the report and maybe to the dashboard, right? So if you're reusing some components, it's useful, but it's only encapsulated in this particular environment. It doesn't show you where is that data warehouse table being populated from, what system, what ETL package, and so on. It's very contained. And last but not least, when you're integrating different systems with APIs, for instance, you really like to know how the data flows, because those connections can be very tricky. It's not obvious, for instance, in this case, where does the data come from? Where the information in these tables come from? How, what program, what script, populates it, how often, and so on. So that helps you visualize and document the integration of the systems. This is the diagram I've found on AWS website. It basically shows you how complex the data flow in any modern environment can be. There are tons of different technologies on any cloud solution. There are even more on-prem solutions. No one can be sure they really have the full picture. That's why I believe documenting those different pieces of code, those different databases, and those data movements is important to get the full picture of what's going on in your system, because in your company, because there's no single technology or person that can actually know that. So yeah, it can be very complex. I'd like to show you a few considerations you should have when thinking about deploying any kind of data lineage solution. The first one is the scope or the sources. So I told you about the BI tools, which have they show you data lineage, but just for the data that is moved within that platform. Same for ETL. Many of the ETL vendors have data lineage diagrams, but they are only applied to the data that is moved within that ETL. Whatever report or BI dashboard, or if there is a script someone runs once a month, and you don't know that's outside of this. There are also some tools that can parse SQL, but again, you have to. It only works with SQL script and can actually. Some of them are quite smart, and they can show you how the data flows, from through different views, procedures, and so on. But it applies only to SQL, and sometimes, quite often, only for SQL in DB2, for instance, right? So it doesn't cover everything. So that's important to understand what's the scope. Then, does the solution provide manual objects entry? Some of them are automated, like majority of them, those what I just said. They only allow you to document what they can see. I believe it's very important to be able to document those, scripts and spreadsheets and, those things outside of, IT projects which were created somewhere and only one person knows about. So we believe you should be able to create those things manually and, do it, add to the catalog any other objects which is either storing or processing data. Then is it automated process? Is it manual, or is it mixed? There are tools which do everything automated, and there are tools like Dataedo which allow you to document it manually. And that's and probably there are tools that can help you mix those solutions. So automated are good because they do work for you. However, they're limited in a way that you cannot, if they get something wrong, which, for instance, SQL parsing is never 100% correct. Even companies that do only that, they fail with the 10% of cases, maybe more, maybe less. You cannot fix that as well. The same story with all those different other technologies which are not part of this solution. So I believe mixed, like manual or mixed approach would be very beneficial. And the last question is object versus column level. The diagrams I've shown you, they were object level, so you can see source table and destination table. Many tools show the flow on the more granular. They show how the data flows from one column to another column. That's another thing to consider. Let's talk about why. Why is it important? So data lineage is useful for a number of initiatives. So data governance and cataloging, obviously, if you're thinking about your data seriously, you really like to know how it flows, where it originates, and where it's used. Data protection and compliance, you really like to know when the data, where is the sensitive and personal data shared. If it's used somewhere, if you like to delete it, you really that gives a good way to find all the places where it's actually used. Data warehousing, this is the obvious use case, very useful to understand where does the data come from in the data warehouse, and then when it's used, where it's used, in what reports and other objects. BI analytics, this is quite popular with BI tools recently to understand, what data is used on particular reports. And system integration. There's more. Just wanted to show that it's cross-domain, metadata management discipline. So few of the benefits, they are better understanding of data by knowing where it originated. If you trust the source, and if you actually understand the source, you can trust the data more. It's easier to audit. If something went wrong, you can find the source of the problem. You can go up the stream and actually check where the source, the issue originated. And you're more confident with changes when you are sure where it's used. you can you can see how the impact, how large the impact would be, and you can also double check if you, when you apply changes, if the other things are still working. Okay, so let's talk about data lineage in Dataedo specifically. That was the theory. Our approach, we in the last release, we allow you to document data flows manually on the object level. So you can show through which tables and procedures and other elements, files, this data flows. In the future, it will be shipping some data flow helpers. That's how we called it. It's these will be those different ways of suggesting you which flows might be correct. It will not be automated process. It will be like semi-automated. For instance, we'll be searching names. If the name occurs in the stored procedure, it's probably reading or writing into that table. Same thing with dependencies. Maybe some built-in rules for, I don't know, external tables, for instance, that it should have a source defined. Interactive diagrams. I'll show you that in a demo in a second. And something I didn't complete here, it's you can use objects from the catalog. So whatever you have documented so far, cataloged so far, you can use it. And you can also create manual objects for anything, to represent anything else that is not scanned automatically. So yeah, that's our approach. We believe it's very useful to document a broader broader ecosystem of your data, and understand what are the components, how they are linked, how the data flows through the system. Yeah, so a look on a key concept on our data model. So on the left and the right, we see the source and destination tables. So these are the data objects or data stores. So there are those are the assets, data assets that actually can store data, which is, usually this is table, or this might be some file, right? It stores data. Then there's also the data processor. This is an object that can move data from A to B. You can think about it as, it could be a stored procedure, function, script, ETL package, so anything that has some logic. In our repository, you can create. So these are the objects in the repository. Any object can be a processor, almost any. And then there's something called step. It's called process. So processor can have multiple processes. Those processes are built to represent steps. So let's take a stored procedure, for example. You can have 1,000 lines of code stored procedure, which has multiple steps. Takes data from one set of tables and inserts them into another. Having this all in one bucket would be confusing, so that's why we introduced those steps. You can only have processes. You can only have one default. That's okay. That for a simple case, but for more complex case, more complicated, you can create more. I hope it will be clear when I show you the UI. Okay, so this is the desktop. This is where you actually define those data flows. And let's start with this Explorer, which you're probably familiar with. So this is a stored procedure, and this is a processor. So our stored procedure is a processor because it moves data from one place and moves it to the other. Then this is a new tab, Data Lineage tab. All the objects in the repository got this tab. And you have a list of processes over here. Every process represents a piece of logic which moves data from A to B. Over here, you can see the objects that are being read from and insert into. In this case, we read from this zoom step, reads from 3 tables and inserts into one CRM customers table. So that's one piece of flow. This is what you work with when you define those flows. So you use existing object or create a manual one. Then you can pick a process. By default there's always one process. You can add more, rename it, and then there's I'll show you that in a second. You use drag and drop to add objects to those tables, to those inflows and outflows tables. It's not a difficult process. I will show it in a second. And Web Catalog got a new tab as well, Data Lineage. This is the tab where you can browse the lineage. So this is where you actually, desktop you define those flows, and in web you can actually analyze it. So this is where you share it with your community. Let's have a look at the web now. Over here I have a database, and we've created data lineage definitions. As you can see, it's quite large. Let's check a particular table. I'm working with CRM meetings table, and I like to understand its lineage. So I find the object, and I go to data lineage, and it draws me actually that's a view. I can see the full lineage. So as you can see, okay, this is a view, but it reads from 3 other views and some 2 tables with the prefix suggesting is data warehouse. Then there's a storage procedure that populates these tables with 4 other tables. And then those tables are populated with some CRM code, some procedures over here, which are reading from 2 services. One is Calendly, the other one is Zoom, reading from API and webhooks. So yeah, just by clicking on the view, it didn't take long, by the way, to define all this, and then automatically I can really basically see quickly where did the data come from. So let's imagine there's some data missing. I can go work backwards and see where the error could occur. And also, let's have a look at this storage procedure. So let's look at the system from this perspective. So the source is the same, and we've seen it, and we can also see what tables are being written into, and what is reading further using those data from this table. So when you can imagine that I could also document reports that are using those views, and then also users that are user groups, like I don't know, sales department, for instance. I could indicate what role in sales department is using that. It's very useful to see what's the impact if I actually go ahead and change this storage procedure. Okay, so that's how you analyze it. You can go to any object and see immediately interactive diagram where with the lineage and impact analysis, so complete flow, upstream and downstream. Let's have a look at the desktop now. So there are 3 simple cases I'd like to show you. A little different approach. So let's document the lineage for the view. Okay, a few words about the views. Views are a special type of object. They are different from tables, which are just stores, and they are different from procedures, which are just data processors. A view is both a store and a processor. It's a processor because it has a script. It doesn't store the data. It's actually running script to get data from elsewhere, and it's also a store because it can be, in fact, a source. You can, it looks like a table, right? You can basically ask it, for the data. I'll explain why it's important in a second. Let's go to the Data Lineage tab. This is where we are working with the definitions of our flows. So this is a simple object. It has just one script, so we'll just use the default process. And I go to the script tab. Okay, and I look and I see that it reads from employees table, employee table, and business entity address, right? So I can document this with a simple search, right? And I select this object and click it, drag and drop it here. I can also look at the dependencies. Not all the objects have dependencies. It depends on the data source. You can also check here. Okay, it's like a person, right? So you can find for person. Look for person and also edit here. Yeah, so as you can see, it's just drag and drop from this pane here. You can narrow down the types of objects, and you can also include objects from other databases. I'll show that later. And view is the special type of object because as outflow, it has only itself by default. So this is how it's different. Let's look at the stored procedure in a second. It doesn't have that constraint. Yeah, so let's see another example, stored procedure. I go to the stored procedure and similar story. I go to the script and yeah, I find, so this is the manual part. I have to actually understand, yeah, bill of materials, right? And so I search for bill of materials and okay, let's say it reads from, yeah, this happened because I had did not select the process. I might be working. This is a summary page. These are the particular processes. So it has just one script, but if it had multiple select and insert statements, then I would use processes. Right, it's easy to document, create new process, just add process, give it a name, let's say it's customer, whatever, right, and then I can define the flows for that. In the future, I don't know when exactly, most likely this year, maybe in a couple of months, I would like us to build those helpers here. That would be a place over here where it will have suggestions with the objects. So right now you have to scan the script manually, but we'd like to scan it for you, scan dependencies, maybe some other logic. I'm not 100% sure what else, what other logic we can add, but I know definitely you can use scripts and dependencies to list as like a short list of suggestions. Then you can drag and drop very quickly. Yes, so as you can see, this process is a bit manual. It's not difficult to go through the list and actually document it. The reward for that is this beautiful diagram, which is interactive, and everyone from now on, they don't have to check the script, right? Because without that, everyone has to check the script, right? What I did, just reading from, okay, select from, and so on, bill of materials. Everyone who would like to understand that has to do it. And if you're looking at, so for stored procedure is simple, but if you'd like to find out what is writing to something, that's a nightmare. You have to go through all the procedures, and they might not even be here. Let's look at the third use case. It's ETL. Let's say I have a ETL which Dataedo doesn't support. It's like SSIS or something. That it's not important. So what I would like to do, I create a manual database. Just click it like that. give it a name. I just called it ETL. Let's stay with this one. And then I would like to register procedures for the ETL packages. So package is like one piece of code which has some logic, which has some steps that read and write data. In a SSIS, this is exactly that. This is a package. I think it's similar for most of the ETLs out there. So if I would like to create a package, I just click add, give it a name, ETL package. That would reflect the actual name of the package. I'm just giving a sample name. Then over here, you would like to, okay, actually, let me go back to number 1. I have something already done here. So my package has different data, like different tasks. I believe that's what it's called. So let's call it tasks. And then you would like to then select all documentation to have access to the whole catalog. Yeah, and then you have to check the actual code, right? So you go to the tool, you reverse engineer it, right? And then you select, right? So yeah, I don't know, is there a customers label somewhere? Yeah, so let's say, okay, this is a view, but maybe this, and you drag and drop, do it similar, the same story, similar as a start procedure, but the difference is you cannot check the script because it's manual, and you have to switch to another environment. You have to reverse engineer it in the source and then document it here. We've done it with a couple of our sources, and it wasn't really that difficult. It's actually rewarding seeing how this network connections grows, and that you end up with a much better place, actually knowing and having documented the flows of the data, because otherwise it's in the heads of few people and no one has a full picture. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. I have just a few tips, few simple tips. I hope this is clear. So by now, it's not a difficult process. You have to test it in your environment to see if it makes sense, right? It's good to document few and then go to the web and see if it makes sense to you. So yeah, create manual documentations for that represent applications, systems, sources, I don't know, folders, data lakes, whatever. So anything that stores data or has some logic. If you have scripts saved on your disk that you run once a week, to clean some data, you can create a documentation called my manual scripts, right? Then create manual procedures to represent all those things that process data, like ETL packages, scripts. There's a Java library maybe that moves data from one place to another. Use manual procedures for that. Then use manual tables or structure to represent all that places where data stops. If it's not a table in the source you have actually scanned so far, you can create a manual table, another manual documentation, and table or structure. Maybe it's an Excel spreadsheet, so create a manual Excel spreadsheet. And final tip, try to identify what moves the data. It's easier to understand the data you actually have, so like a spreadsheet, CSV file or table. It's easier to comprehend that. Sometimes it's not clear what is moving the data, so think what is moving that, and then use existing object or create a new manual one. Okay, so that's it for the training. I think it's quite a lot of information already. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask. I will allow Chase to tell you what you need.
Perfect. Yeah, and again, guys, continue to ask those questions. We'll address those at the end. As for now, we'll cover, if you want to get started with this, or if you've already started, what do you need for this? So first off, a few things to cover on licensing. So number one, if you have the data catalog license, you are good to go both to edit, create, and share. So you can edit this in the desktop, and you can also share this via web catalog. If you have a metadata manager or enterprise license, Enterprise being the legacy license there. You can use Lineage. You can develop this, you can build it, but there's no way to export or share this. So if you do not have access to the web catalog with the Metadata Manager in Enterprise, there's no way to get this out. We do not offer an HTML or PDF. So you will need to upgrade to the data catalog if you do want to share that with others. If you need more training on this, we're happy to help you, happy to walk you through this. Again, take advantage of those customer success hours and the resources that you have there. So feel free to contact support at Dataedo for that. And then if you do need to upgrade or you do need additional licensing for this, feel free to contact sales@dataedo.com and we're happy to help with that. Moving on from there. If you are a new customer, a couple of things you can do here. So first of all, we're always happy to talk to you. So feel free to go on our website, book a meeting. Myself and my team are happy to meet and cover Data Lineage with you and all other aspects of the tool if you are interested in that. Now, if you are confident and ready to get started, you can buy through our pricing page directly, and you can still receive the further training from a customer success and onboarding manager. I believe the last is questions and answers. So to kick things off, we did have one in chat, Piotr. So first off here, sometimes column is transformed in complex stored procedures. How does the software read the stored procedure?
Yeah, let me get back to this theory we had here. What we do it object level, so we don't read, like we don't go show the lineage on the column level. So that answers. I think that answers that. And let's have a look at the desktop. So where is it? The script. Yeah, I need to find this stored procedure. So we only show you this code, right? We do not parse it for now. We are working on some parsing, so maybe we'll add some automation here. But yeah, data lineage looks like that. It's just a list of objects.
Beautiful. And then moving on to the next question, Samantha asks, can you see the diagrams at all if you don't have the web catalog?
That's a simple answer. Currently, you cannot. We shipped the minimum scope we could. So definition here and browsing in the web catalog. I don't know if in the next release or the release after, we are releasing once a quarter from now on. So it will be by the end of each quarter. We are planning to add some diagram here, but it will not be as interactive as this one, right? So it's not gonna be, yeah. So that's basically from the web only, yeah. If you would like a full experience.
Perfect. And then we did have another question saying, can you please show us the process example where the inflow and outflow are from two different databases?
No problem. So let's take my example of ETL, right? So let's use this ETL package tree that I just created. We have a default process here, but let's create some new. Okay, data lake to data warehouse, right? Let's call it like that. Right, and then yeah, let me clear that. So I have a few files here. We'll be improving those filters over here as well, right? Because right now you see everything and you can search by name. I'd like also to search by different like specific database. So let's take the CSV. The CSV is here in over here. Oh, actually here, right? So this is like completely separate documentation. Let's we don't have anything called data warehouse here, but so what did I just load? I don't know, just some strange file. Let's load products table, and and it's in SQL database, right? So SQL database is here. It's a different technology. This is a CSV file, and this is a relational database. Just drag and drop. Let's say I load two tables and product categories as well, right? So I do it like that, and that's it. It's done. I hope it answers the question.
Perfect. And then just had another similar to Zayad's question. It seems like the creation of a manual database is necessary to see objects across multiple databases.
Not really, no. I mean, so multiple databases, you can scan multiple databases right now. So over here we scanned SQL Server. This is MongoDB, right? Some collections. The movement, well, if you would like to create document something outside of those databases like ETL or scripts, it's really good to create manual database because it's a good container for that. However, you can create it over here. You can create a procedure here, give it a name, I don't know, data flow, whatever, and it's here. It does the same process. It doesn't have to be like in separate documentation. You can mix and match. I would advise keep order, not mix those things.
Fantastic. That was the last that we have in questions so far. We'll give it just one more moment. As Piotr mentioned, while the rest of you are adding any questions if you have, we are planning releases every quarter moving forward. So keep an eye out for those. If you are not on the latest, latest version of the software, it's very important. We're constantly making fixes. We're constantly adding new sources that you may be looking for. Recently released Salesforce native connector, which I know a lot of the customers were previously using through ODDC, so that's another thing to look out for. If possible, always try to keep things up to date. It can greatly benefit your experience with the tool. And I do not see any other questions, so we will go ahead and wrap up here. Piotr, if we go to the last slide again, so that the people here on the webinar and those who are reviewing the replay have access here to the contact information. So again, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up here. Appreciate you all joining in. For those of you watching the replay and didn't have the opportunity to ask any questions, feel free to email us here, and then same for those here who are with us. Always do not hesitate to ask questions, reach out. We have live chat on our website. We have contact information here, and you can always book a meeting with us on our website. So again, thank you all for being here, and thank you, Piotr, for walking us through Data Lineage.
My pleasure. Great to be here. I hope you know how to document your data lineage.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.